Okay, good evening. Thank you for joining us. Move that away. All right. So tonight's learning, of course, is in the merit of all those people, all the people in Eretz Yisrael, land of Israel, and those in the front lines, those that need to be rescued, and Jewish people wherever they may be. So we're gonna tonight's class. We're gonna be discussing a special holiday called the 19th of Kislev, Yutes Kislev. Which is celebrated this Shabbos, this coming Shabbos, tomorrow at this point, tomorrow night. Yutes Kislev marks two things. Yutes Kislev marks, firstly, the yahrzeit, the passing of the Maggid of Mizrich, and more significantly, it also marks the release of the Alter Rebbe, the founder of the Chabad movement, and one of the major pillars of the Chassidic movement, his release from prison, from Tsarist incarceration, for the crime of teaching Chassidus, or teaching the teachings of the Chassidic movement. Essentially, to make a very, very long story short, the Alter Rebbe was libeled by his opponents in the Jewish community, and they said that he was starting a new religion, and it was against the law, apparently, in Russia to start new religions or some sort of cult, and they made all kinds of accusations against him, as we will see. And in these accusations, they basically said that, he's going against Judaism, and therefore, if he's going against Judaism, it must be a new religion, and that was against some sort of law, and that this religion was against the Tsar. That was essentially, I think, the more important thing, is that he was going against the Tsar. So the first thing we see from the Alter Rebbe's own comments about this holiday, about this important day, he writes, it must be known that the day God made for us on the 19th of Kislev, which, like we said, is going to be this Shabbos, on Tuesday, the day that it was said good twice in the Torah, the yahrzeit of our holy teacher, whose soul is in Eden, referring to his teacher, the Maggid of Mizrich, that we mentioned. He says, while I was reading in the book of Tehillim, the verse, he redeemed my soul in peace, in Tehillim, chapter 51, before beginning the following verse, I emerged in peace by the act of the God of peace. So the Alter Rebbe saw the fact that he was released while saying this verse of chapter 51 in Tehillim. He saw that as a significant, chapter 55, my apologies, chapter 55. He saw this as significant. And it actually ended up becoming it was made into a song by Chassidim, and these verses of Tehillim that the Alter Rebbe was saying when he was released from prison, and till today it's sung on the 19th of Kislev, a very special song. Now, what's significant about this is that the Alter Rebbe said that this is significant, so we have to understand why is it significant that he said this verse. So if we go to the Talmud discusses this verse. It says in the Talmud, in Tractate Brachos 8a, he redeemed my soul in peace. What does it mean? God says, whoever studies Torah, acts charitably, and prays to the congregation, I will consider it as if they redeemed myself and my children from among the nations. So again, we see there's three things. Number one, this idea of redemption is connected to Torah, acts of kindness and charity, and praying with prayer. So, and praying specifically with the congregation. So we see these three things are connected to the release of the Alter Rebbe from the fact that he was saying these verses while he was released from prison. Now, furthermore, if we actually go to the actual libel against the Alter Rebbe, against Rabbi Shneur Zalman, what were the things that were libelous about him, that were libeled against him? The three things that were libeled against him were, number one, that the Chassidic movement was wasting time with prayer, that their emphasis on prayer specifically was wasting time from study of Torah. That was number one. The second thing was about charity, that the Alter Rebbe had started sending money and founded the Kolel Chabad, which till today operates. It's one of the oldest charities in the world and the oldest charity in Israel. founded in 1788, I believe. And the Alter Rebbe founded this charity to support his followers and disciples and colleagues who had emigrated from Tsarist Russia to Ottoman-controlled Israel. And because of that, the Alter Rebbe was libeled as having supporting the Ottoman Empire, which apparently was in some sort of political, diplomatic issues, perhaps even some sort of war was going on at the time with some element of the Ottoman Empire, with the Tsarist Empire. So that was considered treason. And thirdly was that the fact that the Alter Rebbe was engaging in prayer and had created a new version of the prayers. That what he had done was that he went through all the old versions of the Siddur and he compiled them, and that is a Siddur that Chabad Chassidim and many Chabad houses throughout the world use today as the Siddur compiled by the Alter Rebbe. And now it's not a new Siddur; it's nothing radically new, but it just, again, he picked certain traditions over other traditions, and it was slightly different than the classic Ashkenazi Siddur used in Tsarist Russia at the time. So he was libeled as, again, he's making a new religion. So we know when it comes to trying to figure out why this happened to him, why did this happen to the Alter Rebbe, there's two ways a person can try to figure out why something happened to him. One way is that you could go and you could ask people, colleagues, friends, to help you figure out, why did this happen to me? Why is this happening to me? And together, as the verse says, teshuva b'roiv yoyetz, that victory is won through many advisors. So, that's one way, is to ask people, ask your colleagues, ask your friends why this happened to you. And the other one is, what if you don't have anybody to consult with? What if you have nobody who will tell you what to do? So you listen to what the enemy is saying, what your opponents are saying, and you do the opposite, because they're your opponents. So whatever the opponents say, that's what you do the opposite. There's an old Chassidic saying in Yiddish, "Frage misnaged und tu verkehrt," which means ask a misnaged, ask somebody who's against the Chassidic movement, and do the opposite. Right? That's one way of doing things. So if we look at the allegations made by the Tsarist government, we could see in and of itself what was going on, why the Alter Rebbe was put in prison. So we know that when it comes to these ideas, when it comes to Torah study, we know that the Alter Rebbe excelled in the study of Torah. In fact, the Alter Rebbe himself was chosen by his teacher. He was chosen by his teacher to write and compile a Shulchan Aruch, a code of Jewish law. At the time of the original code of Jewish law was written, Rabbi Yosef Karo had been about 300 years earlier than this. He had written the code of Jewish law. Following his code, the Ramah was a Ashkenazi posek. He wrote commentary, glosses on the Shulchan Aruch, so that people would know what the Ashkenazi customs were, where Rabbi Yosef Karo, the author of the Shulchan Aruch, had written the Sephardic custom. He was from Spain and later in Israel. Then eventually came many, 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 many commentaries, and it started to get confusing again of what is the actual law, because you had some commentaries would say, well, in this case we follow this one, in this case we follow this one, and the other rabbi would say, no, we follow a different opinion, we follow a different way, or I have a new idea of how to establish the law. So it became necessary for new codes to be written. So the Alter Rebbe's teacher, the Maggid of Mezrich, said that he was instructed from heaven that to find his students who are most capable to write a new Shulchan Aruch, and he chose the Alter Rebbe, Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi. And he wrote the Shulchan Aruch, which ended up being published mostly after his lifetime. Some of it was published in his lifetime, maybe a couple of pamphlets, but the rest of it was published later. And again, what he did was, not only did he take the laws, but one of the problems was that every time someone wrote a code, no one understood what the rationales were for the laws that were written. So Rabbi Yosef Karo decided, the author of the Shulchan Aruch, that he was going to write two books. He wrote a book with his long, detailed, learned, scholarly dispositions on the law, and he wrote a second book called the Shulchan Aruch, this code that had just the simple laws without any explanations. But again, it becomes complicated. You have to study both books. Even the books sometimes seem to contradict each other. They're not clearly in sync. So trying to understand his rationale in his code versus in his book of laws, a book of essays, essentially, versus if you had some rabbis wrote these long essays and these long dispositions on the law, it was not always so simple to understand what the law was from their long explanation, because they had talked so much that the law almost gets lost, or it becomes difficult for common people to study such long things, and to understand it could be very difficult. So then again, you write a code, but then the same problem comes up again. So the Alter Rebbe wrote a code that had the reasons, and was the first one to ever do this, and really the only one to ever do this, to write a code of Jewish law that has the reasons inside the code. So you could read it, and he says this, and this is why we follow this opinion. And so therefore, it's very easy for both the common person to follow and the scholar to follow, and you could extrapolate from those laws. You could extrapolate further because the reasons are there. So you could say, oh, well, that rationale applies in the next case, etc. Now, this is something that he wrote early on when he was much younger, much before this libel came. So that's when it came to that. When it came to, so really this idea that the Tsar was saying that the Chassidic movement was slacking in the study of Torah was obviously not true. The Alter Rebbe himself was a tremendous scholar, and like we said, wrote a code of Jewish law, something that had not been done for 300 years. An extensive Shulchan Aruch code, and again was not really ever duplicated, something like that, such a code with both a scholarly work and a work for the common folk. Furthermore, when it came to the acts of charity, not only was the Alter Rebbe not being treasonous, in fact, if we know that when a person gives charity to people in Israel and in general charity, it says Gedolet Tzedakah, the greatness of charity is Shemekareves, says Haga'ula, that it brings the redemption. So really, if you think about it, the Alter Rebbe's giving charity would hasten the Mashiach, and when the Mashiach comes, the land of Israel would no longer be under the Ottoman Empire, it would be under the Jewish rule. So in fact, it was just the opposite of what the Tsar had alleged, that the Alter Rebbe was trying to support the Ottomans. Really, he was supporting the Jewish people there, that was the fact, and also on a spiritual level, he was supporting the idea of Jewish sovereignty over the land of Israel, which was the opposite of what the Tsar had alleged. And when it comes to prayer, again, prayer is something that the Hasidic movement excelled at, and to the point that even to this day, when people see somebody praying for hours and hours at end, they will assume that they are affiliated with the Hasidic movement, and not the opposite. So if that's the case, there has to be some sort of truth to these allegations. Or if we're saying that, okay, we're going to go to our enemies and look at our enemies and see what they're accusing us of, and from there we'll know what we have to improve on. These were not things that the Hasidic movement needed improvement on. The giving of charity, study of Torah, and prayer were not things that needed improvement. So the question is, why were these specific things the things that were slandered against the Alter Rebbe? But the truth is that as much as the Hasidic movement excelled in these things, they grew because of this idea, because of this allegations, and then later the release of the Alter Rebbe and the holiday that persists to this day of the 19th of Kislev. It's known that when it comes to oil, how do you get oil out of an olive? You have to crush it. It needs to go through a painful process, essentially. And what happened to the Alter Rebbe was that, yes, he excelled in all these things, but the true essence, the true oil, the best of the best of what he had to offer came after his release from prison. He excelled in publishing his writings. He excelled at teaching his Torah. He excelled even more in the giving of charity, again, something that persists to this day. The charity that he founded, as well as the Chassidic mode of prayer was improved and spread widely throughout Eastern Europe. So even though that these things were all done by the Alter Rebbe even before he was an adherent to the Hasidic movement, these were things that he had done even in his youth. In the end of the day, these things all improved following that. So when it comes to this holiday, this special day of the 19th of Kislev, it's not something that just happened in the past, but it's an active holiday that happens every single year. So the question is, what is demanded from us on a special day like this? And obviously, it has to follow in these three things that we have to all improve. Yes, we've all been studying Torah and praying and giving charity. These are all things that, because the holiday is associated based on the libels and accusations leveled against the Alter Rebbe, and the verse that he said when he was released from prison, that he connected specifically with his release, is also connected to these three things of Torah study, charity, and prayer. These are all things that we have to improve upon. And even though that we may be already excelling in them or involved in these things, there's always room to improve. There's always room for us to continue to excel and to know that whenever we are we come across any kind of opposition, we should know that that's actually the thing that we must put more effort into, not the opposite. So when we're trying to study Torah and we find opposition to that, whether in our schedule, in our lives, in our intellectual capabilities, whatever it means, it could be when it comes to prayer that we find it hard to concentrate, or charity, we find our financial means limited. This means that these are the things that we must excel in. That when we find opposition, that's what the Alter Rebbe learned from his imprisonment. Whenever there was opposition, he knew that that's the thing that we must be more involved with, not less. So I want to wish everybody a wonderful Shabbos, a happy Yud Tes Kislev. We should all improve on all these ideas and all these entities of our Judaism and Torah, charity, and prayer. Next week, there will not be a class. It's Hanukkah, God willing. Wishing everybody in advance a happy Hanukkah. We would love to have you for any of our Hanukkah programs that are going to be happening over Hanukkah, including Hanukkah at the mall, and whatever else is going to be going on. I'm sure you'll be made aware of those things. The week after is also Hanukkah. Hanukkah starts and ends on Thursday. I hope we should be able to do a class that Thursday. I can't guarantee it, but we're going to try. Either way, stay up to date through Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, wherever you find this class. We are looking forward to seeing you in a couple weeks.